I've asked John to keep that image up on the PowerPoint for a bit. You're looking at what was a photo of Father Mark Riburiano, who on Holy Saturday of this crazy year went on a mission to make sure people knew that the church was still with them. Putting a tall wooden cross through the sunroof of his Honda, he drove through San Mateo's neighborhoods to show Easter hope amid a season that seemed anything but hopeful. He said, I wanted to give people the opportunity to see that Jesus is visiting them, the downtrodden, and those who are in despair or discouraged. The idea came to the priest on Good Friday. As he prepared to celebrate the liturgy, he thought about the veneration of the cross and how the pews that would normally be filled with people would that day be empty. Because they could not make it this year, Father Riburiano decided he would bring the cross to them. He said, it's a good time for the church to go to the people and be the ones to visit, as they could not visit there in the church. And so, with St. Gregory's associate pastor, Father Oliver Ortiz, he drove around San Mateo, blessing people with a relic of Christ's cross. Parishioner Marvin Sanchez live-streamed their journey on Facebook, giving people a chance to participate and to know when to come out to watch the cross pass by. As the cross drove by, people stopped, bowed their heads, or gave a thumbs up. Others knelt on the street or came out to wave, or hold up placards saying, "Thank you," or "May Christ save us." Here I want to give a shout out to our drivers. Yes, that's right. The Episcopal Church, at least ours, now has drivers. This year, a very energized team of folks formed at St. John's to make deliveries. This team has delivered blessed bread and wine at doorsteps so we could break bread together on Zoom. As part of our stewardship drive, this team also delivered poppies caringly grown at St. John's from seeds from our meditation garden. These deliveries have allowed some to safely have brief conversations outside and from a distance, and the entire experience has reminded us all that the church remains the church. That we continue to remember, care for, and love one another. That's what a visit can do. This new effort also inspired a group of parishioners to bring Christmas a little closer to everyone during quarantine by creating a drive-through Christmas, or what I like to think of as stations of the Nativity. A procession of cars every night, in fact right now, has been driving through the story of Christmas, driving to Bethlehem, and then to a hillside with angels visiting shepherds, around the corner to the Holy Family and the nativity scene, and then out past another hillside where the wise men bearing gifts are approaching from afar. After that, each car receives a gift from St. John's, and also an opportunity to offer a gift of warm clothing for our ministry to the unhoused. We could adjust that line from the story of the Grinch that stole Christmas and say, the pandemic hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came, somehow or other. It came just the same. St. John's or St. Gregory and many other churches are now living into the slogan that St. John's has embraced for some time now. The church has left the building. But it is also important, especially this evening, to know that this motivational slogan is grounded on the belief that God has left heaven. This is the theology of incarnation, a vision of spirituality that embraces the belief that God is, yes, fully God, but also fully human. The story of Christmas embraces the vision of God who comes to us. We often hope people will visit the church, but Christmas tells of a story of God visiting the people. I want to tell two more stories about the power of a visit. The first one about a visit how a visit can change the person being visited and eventually change a city. The second one about how a visit can change the visitor. In 1986, when Homeboy Industries founder Greg Boyle became pastor of Dolores Mission, it was the poorest Catholic parish in Los Angeles. The parish included Aliso Village and Pico Gardens, then the largest public housing projects west of the Mississippi. They also had the highest concentration of gang activity in the country. In his first year at the mission, Father Boyle buried over 170 youth killed by gang violence. He tried everything to change this violent culture in the bounds of his newly assigned parish. Nothing worked. That is, until he made the decision to visit gang members in prison. He failed at getting people to visit church, but when he visited the people he was called to serve, things began to change. His first revelation was that most incarcerated gang members never had visitors. They were the ultimate example of someone who was abandoned, alone, and forgotten. When these gang members were released, they started to become ambassadors for his intervention ministry. Hey, that guy visited me in prison. He's okay. He means something to me. Today, Homeboy Industries is the largest gang intervention, rehabilitation, and reentry program in the world, welcoming thousands through their doors each year. And that effort has dramatically caused a downturn in street violence while inspiring an increase in services to those who need help. It all started with a visit. Much like God choosing to emerge in a family without proper housing, who were also alone and frightened, so too the calling of the church is to remember the power of visiting those who could really use a reminder that they are not forgotten. One final story. When I was newly ordained and working at St. Paul's Cathedral in Boston, I learned that the membership database was in disarray. I discovered this because one day I ran across a letter from an elderly woman named Mildred. I could not find her in the directory. Her letter included a donation to the cathedral. I did some detective work and realized that she lived in a nursing home. When I called this home, I was, rather rudely, told that there were no phones in the rooms and that if I wanted to talk to her, I should just come and visit her. And so I did. I was saddened to find her in one of those nursing homes from hell. She was one of 4 people sharing one small room, a room with plenty of stench and no decor. One of her roommates would scream off and on, clearly mentally disturbed. Mildred's bed was not near the window, so there was nothing to look at. When I introduced myself to Mildred, I learned she was in her 90s, although she couldn't remember exactly. She had no living family and confessed that she couldn't remember the last time anyone visited her. She had not been outside the doors of this facility in years. I asked her, "What gives you hope?" She told me that what kept her going was her faith in God. After she told me that, she, with a kind of majestic instancy, began to recite from heart Psalm 23. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me into the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies, and thou anointest my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." Needless to say, when I returned to the cathedral office, I put this amazing woman back on the rolls and made sure she was on our regular visiting schedule. And I also arranged to take her outside in a wheelchair. That's another sermon. I don't know if my visit made much difference in her life, but what I do know is how it changed me. I had visited a manger scene. I had visited Jesus. I had visited the presence of God in loneliness, isolation, and desperation. Mildred remains in my heart to this day, and I ask myself, how many people out there are in need of a visit? But also, how many of us need to do a visit to the mangers in our world? We might experience a birth in our hearts if we do. May the lessons of the pandemic continue to inspire the church to leave the building, and may its people find ways to creatively and safely visit people with good news, whether it's by sticking a cross through the sunroof of your Honda or delivering the Eucharistic bread to those who cannot visit us. And may we tonight all know, deep in our hearts, that God, wherever we find ourselves this evening, has come to visit with us. For unto us a child is born, unto us a child is given. Merry Christmas.